Welcome to Wargaming Recon. I am your host, Jonathan J. Reinhardt. Wargaming Recon is the only member of the TSR Podcast Network to discuss historical and New England gaming. This is a very enjoyable episode. I can't say special anymore because we've been through that before. Very enjoyable episode of the show, at least for me, and I'm sure it will be for you as well, where we're going to be talking about a great set of rules, ESR, the people who make them, the company that does everything for it, and just kind of game design and small scale gaming in general. I am, of course, joined by my buddy and co-host, Mr. Adrian Benson. Adrian, how are you?
I'm doing great, John. I think it would have been okay to say special episode this time.
Very special episode. It's two after school. Johnny discovers he likes alcohol and he has a problem, but he's going to get kicked off the football team. What will we do? I don't know, but we'll find out in the next episode and a half. That's not what we're going to do here.
No, we're not.
Next episode, we'll do that. It'll be a very special episode where the kids discover that there's a scary looking person in town, but really it turns out they're just nice and want to give everyone a hug. We're also joined by the head honcho and just kind of de facto Mr. Do-It-All over at the Wargaming Company, which is the place that creates ESR and gets all those wonderful things out for anyone who's interested in 10 mil Napoleonics. I want to welcome David to the show. David, how are you?
Hello, I'm great.
I have been chatting with you for what feels like a really long time, but I know it hasn't. And I'm really excited about what you do over there at the Wargaming Company. But one of the things I'm most intrigued by is your mascot.
Everybody likes the penguin.
So where did the penguin come from?
My wife loves penguins.
That's great.
It's kind of that we need a logo, and she does all of our art. Well, not all of, but she does a large proportion of our art. So all the uniform plates in our campaign guides, she does all of the artwork for those. So she says, well, before we hire somebody to do a logo, let me putz around and see what I can come up with. And so we dressed him up for, Napoleonics because it's a Napoleonics game. And if we ever do something else, he'll get to change clothes.
That's good. Eventually they should get washed.
That's awesome.
It's hard on campaign. There's not just laundromats.
No, I suppose not. But you really shouldn't store the salami in your coat pocket because eventually that's just a bad idea.
Oh, my word. Now,
yes?
No, I was just going to say, it fascinates. She does all the uniform plates for all of the campaign guides.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing to me. John, I don't think I've showed you I have the 1809 book. I don't think I've showed you that yet, but yeah, wow. I hope you pay her well because they're they're incredible. They really are. I mean, they're the books to me for a painter. They're worth the price of the book just for the painting guides.
You kind of hit on part of the strategy with those. We tried to make sure that there was enough in them that if you go, I already have scenarios, but man, it sure is nice to have all of my painting material here in this one tomb for this campaign, or vice versa. That well, I've got a whole bunch of references for uniforms, but I need scenarios and stuff all together in a nice consolidated form.
Yeah, what I like most probably about the plates in the books is that it's a good painting guide. Like if you were trying to put a reenactor's uniform together,
it would not be the thing then.
Yeah, exactly. But from the opposite side, a lot of the references that are out there that you would use if you're trying to put something like that together, they're not as helpful for a painter as something that's a little more basic, kind of like what you have in the books there. It's really nice.
Well, our goal, we kind of set out to solve a problem. Well, it's long origin stories aside, but Napoleonics is a really, really imposing, scary period to get into.
Yeah.
And so we started looking for what's missing for Napoleonics that we wished existed. There aren't enough scenario guides. When you have scenario guides, they never have the uniforms that you need them. You need to go buy an entire stack of books in order to get the uniform plates that you need to paint from, and da. And so we try to lower those barriers.
Yeah, that's good. And I think from what I've seen, I've only got the one, but yeah, you've definitely done it successfully, I would say. Because you're right, it is probably one of the more intimidating periods to get involved in. If you're at all interested in being, at least kind of accurate, and particularly for a newcomer, I think I posted actually on your Facebook page, somebody was asking a question about uniforms and stuff, and I was like, you can never really get it right with a French Napoleonic uniform, because they were so variable. The best you can do is to get it right for one unit at one particular battle, maybe.
Yeah. I've got a very good friend who says, can you tell they're French? Excellent. Uniform did its job. Move along.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Is the coat mostly blue and are the pants mostly white? All right. Okay, I got it. So,
with the uniform guides, they're not an academic study of Napoleonic uniforms. If you want that, you need to be looking at Rococo paintings and sorts of things. It is it's meant to consolidate a whole bunch of other source material that is generally available, although often expensive, and often spread along a ton of books or online resources and whatever, and put it in your hands in a convenient way.
Yeah. And it does that very well. It's a great resource for somebody that's relatively new to the period, or even somebody who's not new.
We've get a fair amount of feedback from guys who have been playing Napoleonics for a long time, specifically about our campaign guides, who are like, I really don't need these. And then some time passes and they go, so once upon a time I told you that I didn't need these, and I want to know what the next one coming out is, because I've bought them all now, because I have all of these great uniforms. I've got a whole library at home. I've got thousands of plates, and they're just a pain to dig out. Yeah. I can never find, okay, so I've got my stack of 8 books by my painting table, and I still don't know what the drummer looks like of the unit that I'm painting, because he's not in any of the 8.
Right, exactly.
And so it's a convenience factor for people who have been into Napoleonics for a long time, and it's like makes the period possible for the newbie.
Yeah. Yep.
I think you're very smart to kind of hone in on that niche, because it's clearly underserved, and that's what you want to do with the business. But also, you're doing a community service as well. Someone like me who is that newbie, Adrian loves Napoleonics, and I look at him, I'm like, I don't know, that's scary. Let's not do that. But by having resources available like this, it makes it a little less scary.
Yeah, that's entirely the goal. We've got, it started with, we put together a rule set, and that was largely driven by the fact that I couldn't play the games that I wanted to. I could find game systems I liked, but I have pretty high tolerance for complex game systems. I joke that if I had grown up in Chicagoland and hooked up with the Empire crowd there, I never would have gotten into game design, because I would have been satisfied. That would have been just fine. Yeah. But most people don't have a core group of gamers, not anymore. If you go back to the 80s and early 90s, you could find groups that would spend a weekend or a week playing out some large battle with some rule system, like whatever derivation of Empire people were into, or Napoleon's battles, or whatever. But that has kind of fallen away. And there are a lot of people who want to get into the period or are burnt out from the period. We joke around a lot that everyone is either an aspiring or recovering Napoleonic gamer. And we needed something that emphasized the parts that we cared about in Napoleonic systems, and the rest of it that was often cumbersome was just taken out and taken away. And so that was kind of the impetus for getting into game design and getting into developing ESR Napoleonics. And then from there, it begot the campaign guides. And from there, it begot the miniatures box sets. And here we are.
Yeah. And thank goodness you did. I mean, the perspective that ESR takes is one that's not really well covered with other games in the period. In fact, the only two that I can think of that even attempt it, and they don't do it nearly as well. I mean, they don't try to do exactly the same thing, but they do try to cover that large, like this is the entire Grand Armée on campaign kind of thing, is Snappy Nappy, and I think you could also do it probably with Volley and Bayonet. But
Yeah,
they're very different from ESR, obviously. And I agree with you. I like the crunchy rule sets. For a long time, although I haven't played either of them in a while, General de Brigade and Shaco 2 were sort of the go-to sets. But of course, they concentrate on the smaller, like brigade, maybe up to corps level. And nothing really covers the entire army or a couple of corps. I mean, you could do that with those rules, but you would need a lot of time and a lot of space.
well, that's kind of the thing, is that we get a couple of questions that get asked all the time about ESR. Because it says right on the front cover, it's a perspective-based Napoleonic wargame. And people go, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
And I go, okay. I use Empire as a reference simply because so many people are familiar with it.
Yeah.
That it's easy to pick on. And it's been around for a long time. And so, it's, but I go, well, have you ever played Empire? And they go, yeah. And I said, okay, so you make decisions at the army level, the corps level, the division level, the brigade level, and the battalion level, right? And they go, yeah. I said, so that's not a perspective-based game.
Right.
You wear all the hats. And so we're doing the opposite of that. There are almost no decision points outside of the sort of pseudo corps commander level.
Right.
And there aren't mechanics for things that the corps commander does not touch.
Right.
And then that keeps you, because I've had people comment and say, oh man, Napoleonics really needs a great tactical rule set. And I go, really? Because I'm pretty sure that all Napoleonics has are tactical rule sets for the most part.
Essentially, yeah.
And so you've got lots and lots of systems that model battalion tactics, and some are more successful and some are less. And they'll have mechanics for upper level command and control or, strategery, but those are sort of existing separately, almost as a module in those systems. And so, it's like, okay, well, we're going to play out 2 hours of tactical play, and then there's 5 minutes of grand tactical, whatever that happens.
Yeah.
And it's hard to play, Wagram like that.
Yeah.
Because you need a gymnasium and you need a week.
Yeah, easily.
So we try to kind of go the other direction, and we decided very narrowly what to focus on, and we're going to spend time on command control from a corps perspective, and everything else kind of gets abstracted or neutralized.
Yeah, and I think it works very well, and I'm very glad to finally have something like it, because it's definitely an aspect of the period that's been, well, like I said, it's been missing. Nobody touches on it, and it's kind of funny. I first heard about ESR. I saw you guys playing it actually at Historicon last year, and I was just on a whirlwind tour through Historicon last year, and I was like, oh, that looks kind of cool. I wish I had time to check it out or whatever. And then I got home and I started itching for a new Napoleonic rule set, because John will tell, and I think most gamers are like this, but I collect rule sets like a lot of people collect novels. I just like to read them.
Yes. How many you got? Round numbers.
Lord almighty. If you include everything, It numbers into the hundreds easily. From the time
the guy I know who has the most of them is Mark Severance out of Chicagoland, who runs Scale Creep.
Oh, okay.
And he has them all indexed, and it's literally hundreds.
Yeah,
it's absurd.
Yeah, there's absolutely no possible way I could play them all. I couldn't paint for all. I wouldn't even want to. But yeah, it's ridiculous. But I do enjoy reading them. So, and I forgot where I was going with this. Somebody remind me. Oh yeah, out of all of that, none of it covers the period at that particular level, and does it really, as elegantly as it does and simplistically. And it's kind of funny because after I poked around, I said, I saw that game at Historicon. Maybe I'll check that out. And I found the website, and I was like, yeah, all right, I'll order the rules. And at the time, I think you've been following the small scale stuff that we've been doing, but 28 millimeters is basically the scale that we always use, just because they look better. And I never really gave much thought to 6s, 10s, or anything else. I read through the rules and everything, and I was like, yeah, it sounds like it could be okay and everything. And then I bought the starter box and started painting that with the 10 millimeter figures. And after I did the first couple of battalions of that, I was like, yeah, I'm all in on this. This is great. So, but it was funny. I trolled around on the internet, and I was looking for reviews, whether written or YouTube or whatever, of the game. And I found a few, not as many as I expected, but a few of them were kind of critical. And I was reading through the reviews and watching the videos, and I was like, but they're not criticizing the game for what it is. They're angry because it's not what they wanted it to be.
I hate that.
Everybody kind of wanted yet another General de Brigade or Age of Eagles or whatever.
And those already exist. There's not a problem to solve there.
Exactly. So why do it again? I mean, I suppose if you had a radically different take or a radically different system or whatever, it would be worthwhile. But it's been done to death, and I'd be surprised if anybody could come up with something truly unique. So, but ESR is truly unique as far as I can tell, anyway.
So, what do you think is unique about it?
Just the way that everything, as you say, is abstracted away. The only thing that you have to worry about are kind of the decisions that the corps commander is going to make. You don't have to worry about what formation, aside from whether an entire formation is either ployed or deployed. You don't have to worry about formations or the details of musketry or any of the kind of stuff that you have to worry about in a more kind of a crunchy game. And the thing that strikes me with ESR is a lot of the, and this was some of the criticism that I saw, it's a little slow to get into contact and actually start fighting, because a lot of the game is the maneuver that takes place before the actual battle. So if you're used to playing your Napoleonics in a system, and this is a system that John and I play a lot, I actually like it a lot, so I'll pick on it. If you play Black Powder, you're in your opponent's face on turn one, because when you roll to move, you're across the table, and there you are in hand-to-hand combat. And ESR, the whole kind of battle develops much more slowly as you maneuver, and that's exactly what I want in a core level game.
Well, we'll get that from people sometimes. It's kind of interesting because we'll get okay. So we're at Adepticon this year. We've been there the last couple now, and it's a great convention. If you go to a convention in the Midwest, you should go to Adepticon, simply because it is an interesting study of where tabletop miniatures gaming is going. Like, I'm not talking about just, what the offerings are, what the games are, what the vendors are. I'm talking about watch the people. Yeah. It's a young crowd. It's a very energetic crowd. And it's a very positive energy crowd, where there's a lot of inclusion and a lot of excitement about all things gaming. But so we're at Adepticon, and we're running a game. And it's a mix of guys. We've got some people who had their background was 40K. We got some people whose background was random Napoleonic systems and traditional historical gamers. And we're playing out I don't remember which one it was because we ran a whole series of games there, but whichever one this was, and we got our 4 guys sitting around the table playing the game, and one of the 2 French players is just struggling trying to get their head around the scope of the game. Right? Because it's like you say, a large portion of the game is sort of pre-battle maneuver, staging, setting up what's going to happen. And the actual combat is like a couple of turns.
Exactly.
And so this sort of dancing that you're doing on the tabletop where you're jockeying and setting stuff up, his partner gets into this engagement around a village where he's hitting the Austrians, and he turns to his partner who's saying, gosh, I'm not sure if I understand what level this game is played at. I'm having a really hard time linking into it. And the guy engaged at the village takes his charts, which it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and he holds it over the troops that are fighting at the village. And he goes, okay, so underneath this, there's like 2 divisions and some cav and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Under this sheet of paper is the game that we're used to playing.
Yes.
The rest of the table is the game that we get to play today that we could never normally play.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
It was actually really cool to see it just click for somebody like that, because the combat is very beer and pretzels like, but the command control is, I don't think the mechanics are, it's mine. So, of course I don't think the mechanics are difficult, but they are very nuanced. And so there's a guy who'll be running games at Historicon. I hear you might be a Historicon. You should be a Historicon.
I want to desperately, but I don't think it's going to happen now with work issues. In fact,
that's unfortunate. But I hope that something breaks the other direction. You get to be there. But one of the gentlemen who's going to be running games for us there this go takes me aside at Cold Wars and says, okay, so now I've run ESR games several times. I've played ESR games many times now over the past couple of years. He says, I think I'm starting to understand how to use orders. And I'm like, oh no, don't tell me that it took you like a couple of years to figure out how the mechanic works. He goes, oh no. It was like immediately obvious the first time I watched someone else do it in a game that I was kind of, checking in on. The mechanics really easy, but figuring out how to best use them to accomplish what I want in a given situation, that's what's hard to master. Yeah, and that's the problem of being a corps commander.
Precisely. Yeah, I hate to use the chess analogy because I use it all the time, but chess is a game where the mechanics are simple and the strategy and how to do things is not. And I would kind of compare this to that. It's like, I mean, you're right. The actual mechanics of giving the orders and everything is simple. It's dead simple. But knowing what to do when and when to convert a move order to an attack order and this, that, that's very hard, or it can be very hard to get your head around and get used to. But that's fine. But actually learning the game and how to mechanically do stuff, that's not hard at all. But yeah, the subtle.
That's good to hear.
If I can do it, anybody can do it. But yeah, the subtlety in not how to do it, but when to do what. That's where the greatness of it lies, I think.
I get to see a lot in the games that we run at conventions. I get to see they're predominantly new players, and I get to see a lot of people struggle with the timing and luck out with the timing. And it's, sometimes people will go, they'll be trying to beat up on an opponent with skirmishing artillery and stuff sort of preemptively before they commit. And they'll do it way longer than necessary.
Yeah.
But they don't know that yet because this is their first time trying it out.
Right, exactly.
And there'll be other people who go, the instructions that we give them are always the victory conditions are do dumb things, get yourself into trouble, see how it works. Because that's how you learn whether or not you like a game system, is you see how different situations play out. And so we'll have a guy. We had a guy in a game charge French cuirassier through dense woods into fresh Austrian grenadiers. It was a terrific way to get rid of his French cav.
Well, that's good. I do things like that a lot because I like to have a lot of clear space on the table. So you get rid of those guys early on, and then you got more space to maneuver the army.
Well, sometimes there's too many things on the table you got to control, so you just want to whittle it down to what you really care about.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. But you're right. You do something like that, and if you get spanked for doing it, that's great because that's what you would expect to happen. And if that doesn't happen, that's a problem.
We've played games like that.
Yes, then you should be concerned. You're like, how come they could do that?
Yeah.
So you like the 10s?
Yes, I do now.
Okay.
I considered going 15. All my other Napoleonic stuff is 28. But flipping through the rules, it seems ideally balanced or made for 10 millimeter. And then I noticed, obviously, that all the starter sets are 10 millimeter figures. So I was like, who am I to argue? We'll do it in 10 millimeter.
So you want to hear a funny story about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
The game was entirely developed with 15s and inches 75 yards. I had never painted or owned a 10 millimeter figure before, I don't know, like December, January a year ago.
Oh wow.
And we had, because the game system was done sort of before we were envisioning, would we do box sets or would we partner with the manufacturer? Would we, anything to do with that?
Right.
And so getting back to, trying to lower barriers to getting into historical wargaming and Napoleonic specifically, everybody who's into Napoleonics already has got Napoleonic figures.
Right.
And guys who are getting into it fresh fall into the category of they got nothing and neither do their buddies, or they've know people, maybe not well, but they have access to somebody who already has a collection. And so we wanted to design a game system that was very literally figure scale agnostic.
Yeah.
And to some degree, we took the easy road with doing a grand tactical game because there's lots of stuff you don't have to worry about in a grand tactical system that's really unforgiving when you do tactical stuff. The whole time distance problem and how long turns take to execute versus what they represent is really unforgiving in tactical game systems. And in grand tactical and higher level stuff, you've got a lot more flexibility with that. And that happened to be where our interest lied. So that kind of lucked out. But so we very purposefully designed it so that all the mechanics are agnostic and can be used at whatever ground scale you want, and therefore whatever figure scale you want. And the weird thing is that it does play significantly differently with, at the higher ground scales with the smaller miniatures because the table is so big.
Right.
A 5x8 table is 5x8 miles with our box sets. That's like a Borodino sized battlefield, pretty close.
Yeah.
And Borodino might be a bad example because that's a relatively small, condensed, dense battlefield. But you try to do that with 15s and you're starting at half the distance for the amount of space that you take. And so there's a lot faster. I'm in combat already, and a lot less jockeying. But that's not a factor of, oh, we changed the rules for different scales. It's just a practical factor of how big of a table have you got.
Yeah.
So you have a large enough table, it all plays the same.
Why did you test it originally with 15s?
I had 15s.
Okay, there you go. I thought that might be the reason. I don't know if there was an affinity towards a 15 or what it was.
I liked 15s for no particular reason other than I had started paying 15s 25 years ago. And so that was what I had and what I liked. Once upon a time, I played a lot of BattleTech. And so my only experience paying small things was painting the original infantry for BattleTech, which I think are generously 6mm.
Yeah.
The stuff that they did later got way bigger, but 20 years ago, yeah, it was very, very small, and I hated that. But to each their own. And then we started looking at 10s and options and convenient ground scales and stuff when we were going to do the box sets, because we knew that we wanted to include bases. We know that we wanted to include flags, because once again, it's the make it as convenient as possible for the new guy. The newer, younger audience that's beginning to get into historicals, and don't let anybody tell you that doesn't exist, because there's a lot of them.
You mean the graying of the hobby is fake? There's not new people getting into it? I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just being facetious.
No, he's not.
I'm going to take the bait if that's okay.
Please, if you want.
And go on a little bit of a bird walk. So there's, my opinion, for whatever that's worth, there's a massive sea change going on in historical wargaming right now. And, the funny thing about a sea change is when it's going on and you're living it, you don't notice it, right? It feels way different than it does from the outside or in retrospect.
Yeah.
But there's a whole generation of historical gamers who started in, we'll go 1970s through 1990s. And they are going to be, I'm not advocating whether this is good or bad. It's gravity. It's just, things change and people move on and new people show up and blah, blah, blah. They are going to be supplanted by a whole bunch of gamers that are between 20 and 40 roughly. And the saddest thing in the frickin' world to me right now is that there's a portion, I don't know if it's actually very many or few or what have you, but there's a portion of the older generation that are sort of yelling, "Kids, get off of my lawn." And I find it really, really sad, because I understand their motivation for doing it. They care about certain things in the hobby. And then they look at the younger generation and they go, I don't see any of the stuff that really excited me about the hobby and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the result is that they're not engaging with the new generation that's coming. And that engagement is what would allow the things they care about in the hobby to be preserved with the next generation. Yeah. And that makes me horribly sad. So is historical gaming going away because of graying? No, but it's changing a lot. And how much we care, because I kind of count myself. I grew up gaming with people who were older than I am. So even though I'm actually in that younger bracket, I sort of care about a lot of the things that the older bracket cared about or cares about. And I'm going, we don't need to lock ourselves in an empty room, guys. We need to be engaging with these new people so that it's going to change. It'll be different, but some of what we care about could be preserved.
Yeah.
And that would be nice. That's what we're trying to do. Napoleonics is going to change, and so we're trying to make sure that I'm trying to make sure that the parts I care about persist, because we make them marketable, if you will, to people who are coming, as well as valuable to people who have been here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you do that well with the, like you say, with the unit packs and everything, because for the younger gamers, like you talk about, particularly guys coming up from 40K or whatever, they're used to GW being the one-stop shop, right? It's like you buy your pack of models and you've got everything you need to build that particular force, except for the paints and brushes, which conveniently GW also sells. Now you can make the argument that GW is the devil, but the point is that's what they're used to. So providing that same kind of thing in the historical arena is a great idea. I mean, some of the bigger companies, I'm thinking Warlord in particular, they're kind of doing that too.
Battlefront.
Oh yeah, Battlefront. I forget about
Battlefront's been doing it. You're right, Warlord, but more and more, I think you're right. More and more of them are kind of realizing the potential there. That maybe they don't make it in selling rule books, for example, but unit packs or campaign guides or paintbrushes or whatever, or other accessories and paraphernalia for gaming can be really useful.
And it is actually, oddly, one of the things that I hear some people complain about, not loudly and not longly, but it's like, oh, Warlord, they're no better than GW or whatever. It's like, I suppose you could make that argument. I mean, a lot of the Warlord guys are ex-GW guys, but
they're introducing a lot of people to the hobby, though.
Exactly that, and they're making it easy for people to get into it. So how can you get mad at that?
I think that there's a misconception among a lot of people that the newer or younger or whatever you want to call them generation of gamers doesn't care about history, or they don't care about X or Y, what have you. Right. And that's not my experience with them. My experience with them is that times have changed and their expectations have changed. So like, they like the research, they like the game, but they don't necessarily have time for the prep and the research and the game time, because both them and their spouse work and they've got 2 kids and blah, 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 blah. And so something's got to give. And the first thing to give is research for shopping, right? Because not period research. That, I'll do when I have time. I can do in the evening or whatever I fit in. It's a solo thing that I enjoy. I don't do as much of it as I want, blah, 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 blah. But what were we used to? I'm guessing that you're used to the same thing that I was, which was, it's not strange to spend a weekend or a week or longer figuring out, where do I buy the pieces that I need?
Yeah, I mean, at least
I got a project, and I'm gonna buy. You can go to a historicals convention and go, okay, so I need rules. Who sells rules? Well, he sells rules. Okay, who sells miniatures? Well, the guy who sells rules doesn't sell miniatures, but the dude a couple of booths down from him sells miniatures. Okay, does he sell all the miniatures I need? Well, no, he only sells like maybe a quarter of them, but he has the nicest ones though. And then there's another guy around the corner, or maybe he's not here anymore, but you can get his stuff online or what have you. And he sells some of the other ones that you need. And there's another guy who does flags, and none of these people do bases, and none of them do painting guides. And you're going, so I got to go to 12 sources in order to get into, just to buy stuff.
Yeah.
And people who've, Amazon's been around for a while, and people are kind of used to being able to find stuff that they want. And in a convenient way and purchase it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still difficult doing that without these, one-stop shopping places. But I tell you, at least these freaking kids today, at least they have the internet. I used to have to look at like hand-drawn sketches in the back of like gaming magazines that some guy ran off of a mimeograph machine in his basement to find out who was on. So I don't want to hear any of their complaining.
And get off of my lawn.
Off my lawn, yeah. Oh my word.
See, Adrian, that's one of the reasons why we do the holiday gift guide, because buying for gamers, whether you're buying for yourself or another one, can be hard. It shouldn't be, but it can be.
It can be.
So we try to make it a little easier by recommending stuff and reviewing things. And I mean, we're not the only ones doing it, thankfully, but it's hard. If only there was a better way, right?
Well,
yeah. Well, I mean, and we've
go ahead.
Good. Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, we've talked about that on the show before about the relative difficulty of getting into historicals versus getting into something like 40K because of what we just talked about. And, we talk about this, historicals are going by the wayside kind of thing. And we're feeling that that's kind of the problem. But it is getting to be less a part of the problem. So I'm happy to see that, actually, although I do my fair amount of complaining sometimes about certain of the larger hobby companies that manufacture a certain company level World War II game that we won't talk about anymore. But
no. And yet I need one of their spray paints, which they don't make anymore. So who knows?
No, they don't. I told you got to go get the war sprays from Army Painter. They work great.
Yeah, I do like them.
There was a guy at Adepticon, not this year, but last year. It's our first year there, and I'm upstairs in one of the large hallways because they have games going on everywhere. They're in ballrooms, they're in hallways, they're in all over the place. And this young guy is walking by our table while the games are in, and he literally reaches out and grabs his pouch. He's walking with another guy, and he stops, and the other guy doesn't. And he grabs the other guy's shoulder, just like almost enough that he like trips him to fall, sort of thing. And he goes, this is what I'm talking about. It's like Warhammer, but it's freaking real, man. It's freaking Napoleonic. So it's like freaking history. And it's just every other word is an expletive. He's just going off. But he's excited and the thrill that is, and I'm going, oh, wow. I have no idea how to react to this, but come, check out the historicals. Yes, please.
Yeah.
And so there is a palpable appetite of stuff with it. And the expectations are, so on our Thursday night group that we game with, that I game with regularly, we're, I don't know, a handful of months ago, a couple of the guys buy into Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones thing, and so we're playing it because they wanted to check out what they buy into and see how it works and do they like it and blah 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 blah. And they've got, they're effectively, and they're nicely done artwork and stuff, but they have terrain packages that are effectively cardboard that you lay out as markers, right? So it's like, here's where a woods is, and here's where a bone pile is, or whatever. And they also have those as like 3D models, like you're used to with historicals.
Right.
And so we got in a conversation about that. And one of the guys is just like, oh my gosh, those are so stupid expensive. They want so much money for this little diorama of trees. Who would ever do that? And I go, well, it's a tournament game, right? So they play it probably on a 4x6, right?
Mm.
And there's some sort of terrain generation system. So there's like a limited number of those that get put on the table. Well, yeah. Okay. So you can know going into it that you're going to need X number of those ever. Right?
Yeah.
I guess. Okay. How many trees have you got for your historical games? He's like, oh, I don't know, like 400. I go, okay, so did you spend an equal amount of money on your 400 trees as that guy is going to spend on his like 4 bases of trees? because both of those are 100% of what you need.
Yeah.
for their respective game. And that's, as a historical gamer, I didn't always look at it that way. I looked at it as, oh my gosh, this stuff is so expensive. But it's a question of how much of it do you need for the thing that you're going to do.
Right.
And it actually ends up being pretty similar in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So
one of the things I like that you guys do is part of being a one-stop shop is that you not only put out stuff that you have, but you put out stuff that you guys really believe in. So, for example, you have trees that I think are gorgeous. They're not your trees, but they're trees that you believe in, that you love, and you make it more accessible for people to get. So, I mean, that's just one example, but you do that with a variety of things, and I think it's really smart, both for you as a business, but also for the community, for the hobby as a whole, to try to get access to stuff that maybe it's a little too difficult to get to otherwise. And again, for me, finding really nice trees can be a pain in the butt. And so knowing that you have these things is wonderful.
Yeah, the trees and stuff are nice. I mean, this is going to sound stupid, but I think part of the struggle with trees in particular is what size of tree do I get?
All sizes of trees. All sizes of trees.
Well, and that's what I do. Because they all work.
They grow in different sizes.
They grow in different sizes.
Year to year, they change.
But I feel like I'm being made fun of here. It's okay.
You're not used to it, are you?
No, I'm usually on the delivering end of that. That's because I'm usually talking to John.
That's true. I'm getting beat about.
What I was going to say was,
we're not laughing at you. We're laughing with you. You're just not laughing.
Oh no, I'm laughing at him completely. 100% in.
The nice thing about it is buying the trees off of your website. You can be reasonably sure they're going to work correctly with the scale of models you sell too. That's all I was going to say.
Well, that's very kind. I should stop picking on you.
No, don't, because it's wonderful and people won't be used to it. It's like the once in a lifetime opportunity here.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we looked for trees for a while. We actually bought, I think we might have bought a couple dozen different varieties of trees. We bought them from at least 12 different manufacturers.
Yeah.
That we bought samples of because it's trying to make stuff accessible and trying to make sure that the guy who's just getting into it, we don't want to send him somewhere else. And don't get me wrong. Part of that's because we're a business and sure, we would love him to buy the stuff that he's going to buy anyway from us.
Yeah.
But also because some of the people getting into it won't know where else to look.
Exactly.
The people who know where else to look already, they're going to look at what we have and they're going to look elsewhere and they're going to hopefully, make a good decision about what they like the best and will be happy with. But we are trying, we try to price things aggressively and we try to provide as top of tier products as we can. So like the trees that we get from Knock, which is out of Germany,
yep.
And they're pre-made trees. They don't have a base on them. They actually have a flat bottom, and we include bases. So all you have to do is stick glue on the bottom and plop them down. Yeah. And you should flock them and dress them up a little bit, but you wouldn't have to in order to get them on your table. You should though, because everybody should flock their stuff. But that's a whole nother PSA.
Next Saturday special.
Yes, but they're durable because I don't know if you got a box of trees that you've had forever that just looks like it's falling apart. It's like got tree disease or whatever, and all the foliage is falling off of it, sort of thing. It's like emerald ash borer or something.
Yeah,
and these don't have that problem. They hold up really well. So when your ham-fisted pal smashes one on the table, it's not destroyed, and they stand packaging and travel, and so we like those quite a bit.
Yeah, I bought a bunch of those actually. I've got them based. Some of them I based individually, but I also based wood patches and everything. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go ultimately. I like the looks of the wood patches better, but individually based trees are definitely better for the game table for moving stuff around. But yeah, they are nice trees and they're good value for the money. And I was happy to find them. I mean, trees are relatively easy to come by thanks to model railroading. But again, it's most of the stuff I've gotten for ESR, I've gotten off of your site. So the exception being, I did have to hire some foreign mercenaries because you don't have any old guard figures available yet. So
not yet. Not yet. We get so a year ago, about a year and a half ago was when we launched the box sets. And immediately after we launched the box sets, we had questions about when will there be British and when will there be Prussians. Those were the two. I mean, people ask about early war stuff,
right,
because of all of our miniatures that we've released so far are mid-late war.
Yeah.
But those were the two predominant ones that everybody asked about. And the funny thing is that there were more guys asking about the British, but the people who asked about the Prussians were intense. I mean, they were
that
like,
seems fitting,
right?
Yeah, that's exactly what you would expect of a Prussian.
Yeah. When's it happening? Who do I have to knock off in order to make it happen faster? Is there somebody in line that we can just, he can go away and we can move ahead? It was a little bit scary. It's like, no violence is necessary. We can get you Prussians.
Oh my word.
It doesn't surprise me in the least.
They're just looking for efficiency. And
my ancestors would have loved that.
Good Lord.
It's true though.
Yeah.
What are some of the other products that maybe aren't yours, but that you guys really believe in that you're selling through your website, or just that you think people should be having access to?
So we've got some terrain that we've got as far as buildings and scenics and that sort of stuff, and that fits that niche, and we've got trees covered, and obviously we've got box sets of miniatures, and we're not planning on making tables anytime soon. But that layer that goes between the table and all the stuff that you put on top of it, we've got kind of exciting announcement about. You guys know the gentleman who does Killing Fields terrain, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So do we know when this is airing?
Well, people listening to it now because it's their reality.
Oh,
so our reality and theirs we're at a disconnect.
Oh, that's terrifying and scary. See, now I'll be.
It's very altered carbon Black Mirror going on.
So on Monday, today's Wednesday. On Monday, we'll be making an announcement that we're carrying the Killing Fields terrain grassland mats, and we're going to be offering those. They're absolutely either of you guys have one?
Not yet. It's on the way.
Yeah. Yep.
They're great. It's a teddy bear fur mat. They're incredibly soft. They're very, very light. They lay over the tops of hills and stuff wonderfully because it's such a lightweight fabric. It conforms and such. It's a pretty low pile teddy bear fur, so it works well at a variety of scales. For it looks relatively like grass fields. It actually looks amazingly like grass fields, and they're dyed at 3 different levels. So if you brush back the grass field, so to speak, you can see that it's there's a brownish at the base, and then there's like a greenish tinge, and then there's a yellowish tinge. And so depending on the light and how you brush the thing out, you get a lot of visual variation. They're absolutely beautiful mats.
Awesome.
So we'll be rolling those out on Monday and taking pre-orders for them, and for delivery at Historicon, or shipping following Historicon.
Nice.
That's really exciting.
Yeah,
we're very excited about those, and they're going to be very competitively priced. Game mats tend to run $75-$80. And our intention is that these will be 60.
Oh wow.
Cool.
So yeah, if you're looking for a beautiful, light, well laying game mat that looks like terrain, that's real, it's a great option, and it's at the affordable end of the spectrum.
Yeah, definitely $60 is a bargain, really.
Yeah,
I have a bit of a problem when it comes to game mats, in that I tend to accumulate a lot of them in the way Agent gets rule sets, and I've been known to drape myself in them and use them as blankets and cuddle them, and
it's every bit as disturbing as it sounds.
And yet people seem to enjoy them in the video, and I don't quite know why, but they do. And so I really love game mats. I don't know why.
I didn't actually think it was all that disturbing until you were like, people enjoy me wearing them on video.
You'd have to.
That seemed a little bit more awkward.
Yeah, you'd have to see it, but trust me.
I'll get a screenshot and put up on our social media of me as game mat man or whatever. You guys just get one. I maybe even put it over my head like a Jedi Knight or something. I don't quite recall, but
Yeah.
I do love a good game
with
mat.
a furry. I'm not sure that it would speak Jedi Knight. It might speak like, I don't know, wood elf or something. But it's
Maybe the good things, they're really versatile, and like if you don't have a lot of terrain, I think it's the one thing you should really pick up.
They are, and the really nice thing. I mean, lots of people make their own teddy bear mats who are into traditional historical wargaming, and those are awesome if they're done well. But holy man, are they a pain to produce?
Yep.
You have to spray them in order most of the time, because you can't really dye them at home.
No.
And so you have to use different types of spray paint so that it's happier with the fabric, and you have to comb them out in order to make sure you don't get chunks of paint or just chunks of matted fur and that sort of thing. It's difficult, it's messy, what have you, and just getting all of the parts is also rather expensive, so you don't really necessarily save very much that way.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's like just getting a big swatch of teddy bear fur that will make an acceptable size gaming mat isn't, it's not going to break the bank, but it's not cheap either. And then, like you say, by the time you buy the paints and invest the time, you may as well have just bought one.
Yeah.
I mean,
so the ones that we'll be rolling out are a standard 5x7. So if you use them in a tournament setting, because you're playing Saga or whatever, if you're the tournament gaming, I'm not a tournament guy, but if that's your thing, even with hills and stuff, they will fit, pretty precisely in the area that you want, because it's got that little bit extra. And if you're a more traditional historical guy who's not into ancients, because ancient players are really, really into tournaments, but then there's a lot of nice things about the fact that they're actually 3D. If you get just a flat mat, and there's some really nice ones out there, but everything looks stacked up.
Yeah.
On them. Because it literally is, right? You're putting roads down on top, and you're putting rivers down on top.
Yep.
And with the teddy bear fur mat, with these that we're going to be carrying here, that fur sticks up around the sides of what you're laying down.
Yeah.
So the road looks like it's in the ground instead of raised above the terrain, and the river looks like the ground around it is a little bit higher, and it's not perfect, but it's also something that you can move about. It's not like it's not the same as a terrain board where you can actually carve it out and what have you.
No,
but
definitely.
You also don't have to have an entire basement full of terrain boards.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Which is handy. Yeah, you don't have to store them, and more importantly, you don't have to build them.
Yes.
Do you happen to have any other new products or releases that you can tease, or you're willing to share or promote?
We don't have anything else that is coming out yet. We have quite a few things in the works, but we don't have anything going on yet in that sort. I did you did mention to me that Adrian thought maybe we might be working on something.
Yeah, that was a rumor, right, Adrian?
I thought I'd heard that rumor.
Yeah. And what was it that you thought you heard?
Releasing a version of ESR for the 7 Years' War.
So we have done. We don't have a product. We don't have a timeline or anything like that. But I will tell you that we've looked at a couple of different periods, and 7 Years' War is one of them.
What are the others?
We've looked at 7 Years' War and we've looked at ACW.
Okay.
I mean, they're the obvious choices to look at in Horse and Musket.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some, from a design standpoint, there's some interesting problems to solve with both of them. With 7 Years' War, the problem, and I want to back up and say that I don't know if adapt is the right word for what we'll do. It won't be, I can tell you for certain that we won't release, ESR for XYZ period.
Right.
ESR for ABC period. Right. Because I believe very, very strongly that what makes different historical games especially feel kind of right is that the period is in the DNA of the game design.
Right.
Otherwise you end up with systems that it plays the same all the time, and I'm just changing the wallpaper when I change the miniatures on the tabletop.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of games out there that do that. Our favorite game, Black Powder, is.
I wasn't going to say it because
I was thinking that. I was like, Hail Caesar, Black Powder.
I mean,
Kings.
It sounds like I'm picking on Black Powder, which I'm not, because I love the rules. They're
Me
great.
too.
If all you want to do is push guys around the table and roll some dice, you can't do any better than that. But yeah, it's like you can, one game is, I don't know, War of the Spanish Succession, and then the next game is American Civil War. They're pretty much the same.
Yep.
So I would tell you that it'll definitely, both of those will, they'll be conceptually similar.
Okay.
There will be, I'm sure there will be shared mechanics or similar mechanics, but it's not going to be a, we did find and replace of the unit names and here you go to town. Okay. Sort of arrangement. And if that's Gavin, if they ever come to pass, but we have done work on both of them. Okay. The 7 Years' War is an interesting problem to solve because a lot of the game is in deployment.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking from like the standpoint of, the game that we're making, a lot of the game is in deployment. I'm just talking about when I think about the period, what is the turning point for those battles and how much of it evolves on the battlefield versus how much of it is the staging of the fight.
Yeah.
And yet the Napoleonic battlefields are more dynamic than the 7 Years' War battlefields. And you have to, if it's going to be a perspective-based system, you have to ask yourself, where does the player make decisions? Because that's the fun part. That's how the player interacts with the table.
Right.
And so in tactical systems, you're talking about, what formation do I want to be in and when do I want to hold my fire and when do I want to open up and that sort of thing. And Grand Tactical, you have to establish that, and it's often different.
Yeah.
With ACW, the problem that you run into making a commercial product, the problem that we run into making a commercial product is if you make a Grand Tactical system for ACW, people are going to want to play the large battles that they know the names of, right? It's like if you do if you make an ESR, people are going to want to use, and they're going to want to use it to do Austerlitz, so it better support doing Austerlitz. If you make an ACW game, people are going to want to use it to play Gettysburg.
Right.
So, well, okay. If we've got, is it going to be the same perspective? Because if it is, you're going to have 3 people playing 7.
Yeah.
And you have an automatic bottleneck just in terms of the fact that, you know, these games are social, and gaming is, you know, by its nature social. And so you've got how many players are interacting with a singular player at a given period of time, and how is that how does that affect gameplay?
Right.
And it's not really a fair analogy to say, you know, you've got 3 versus 7 at Gettysburg, because you don't have everybody involved on the one side.
Not all at once.
The time. Right. So it is actually smarter than that, but it's illustrative of the design question that you have to deal with.
Right.
Do you have a preference for which rule set if you were able to do whatever you need to bring it to fruition, which set of rules you think you might want to do first? 7 Years' War, ACW?
I have a business preference, but I don't know if I have a personal.
Well, that's true.
I like both of them quite a bit. I'm an ACW guy. I started wargaming with the ACW. I started getting into history with the American Civil War, and so that was sort of my first. We're known as a Napoleonic company because that's where our product line is, but that was on the personal side. There was less of a problem for me to solve for myself when it came to the American Civil War, because there were people that we played ACW games with that it worked. You know, I had already solved that problem for myself. I don't need to go out and invent an ACW game in order to have fun and play the American Civil War. And that wasn't the case with Napoleonics. And so that kind of drove that direction. But there's also there was a business case with Napoleonics, because the Napoleonic market suffered from it's hard to get into. Yeah. And ACW is a lot easier to get into than Napoleonics. And it's less true now than it was 5 years ago. But there are, you know, a fair number of ACW games that are approachable, at least comparatively.
Yeah.
There are proportionally more ACW games that are approachable than there are Napoleonic games. Partly just because of, you know, things innate to the period. How many figures do you need to get into ACW? You can get into ACW playing with, you know, 100 guys and play a tactical game, and it's not bad. And a lot of Napoleonic systems wanted you to have a lot more miniatures that were a lot harder to paint and blah, blah, blah. So there was a balancing act there. It's not as easy. ACW is not as easy as World War II. I like to pick on Battlefront because I thought that they solved a problem that didn't exist. Yeah. They made World War II really accessible, because God knows it was so hard to get into World War II.
Yeah.
You know, the pop culture history on World War II is not terrible. And there's tons of it.
Yep.
And the uniforms are not that hard, and they're easy to find. Yep. And, you know, blah, 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 you can kind of go down the line. But they did do a good job of, you know, sort of unifying and popularizing World War II, you know, in a term, and saying it with a new generation of gamers and all that. And so I give them credit for it. But
yeah,
I kind of look at it and go, you know, if you really wanted to solve the hard problem, you would have picked a period that was harder to get into than World War II.
Well, credit where it's due. They solved the problem where they needed money, and now they're making lots of money. So they did solve that problem.
True, because I mean, just think. Then they went into Vietnam. They went into actually no. Before that, didn't they do the Israeli conflict?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yom Kippur
Yes,
wars and all that kind of stuff.
6
And then
War,
they did the other. Now they're doing modern. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, John? 10 years or so ago, we were actually playing. Was it that long ago? It can't be that long ago.
No, it's that long ago. We're
Wow.
old. You forget.
I am anyway. But yeah, we played a lot of Flames of War. The only reason I really got into it initially is because that's what people at the store where we game at, that's what they were playing. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm playing Flames of War. And it was okay. I didn't hate it. And then, but of course, it really is a kind of a tournament thing. And then I was like, yeah, I'll play in a couple of Flames of War tournaments. I'm not a competitive gamer. It's not really my thing. And I was like, all right. So I've played in a couple of Flames of War tournaments. That sucked, but the game is still okay. But
it's a very coherent game.
It
And
is. It is.
People hear me say that and they think that I'm being dismissive of stuff, but there are a lot of incoherent game designs that are published.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've played a fair amount of Flames of War. I own some Flames of War stuff, and it's not what I want in a World War II game, but that's my personal preference. That's not a judgment about whether or not it is functional as a game. Objectively, it's perfectly functional as a game. It works very well.
It does. It's very functional as a game. It's as a game, it's a very good set of rules. As a World War II game, going back to stuff we were talking about a little bit earlier, it has no
It has
flavor.
great wallpaper.
Precisely, and that's all it is. It's like it didn't do anything for them. And where they finally lost me was when they started doing it seemed like every 6 months or so there was a new book, and now
the
all
DW disease.
Exactly, and now all the forces that you were running out of the old book, even though it's the same theater, same time period, they're no good anymore. You got to run this new stuff, or you're not going to win. So it's like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, so then everyone had a panther and a tiger, and it's like, what? No, that would not have happened, but whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not even that. But the way the lists were tailored, it's like,
well, it's like they forced you towards that.
Yeah.
And that annoys me. And other rule systems do the same. And some people love that, which is great for them. But again, like we said, it's not my preference, not what I want.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. As a game and as a model, particularly geared toward tournaments, that's fine. And the people that play it don't seem to mind it. So good for them. But it's not for me.
Mm-mm.
And that's enough.
You're totally right, because it's geared toward high competitive play, and how can I optimize this?
Exactly. And there's a huge swath of people out there that love that kind of gaming, and this definitely fits their needs.
And it does it well. So I mean, like, I don't want to knock it for that. It's just it's not for me. It's not what I like. What it wants to do, it's doing, and it does pretty well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the flavor of ice cream I want to eat.
No, it's not, and that's why we have more than one set of rules, and why I own so many.
Yeah, thankfully you have a whole home full of these things, and so we can just resort to that.
Absolutely. All right.
So a funny thing about them is that they went to plastics a couple of years ago, right?
Yes, they did.
And so I got a buddy who's really, really into Flames of War, and they're in like 4th edition now or something like that.
Yeah.
And he likes it, but he said that in the community that he played with, there was a lot of fallout about it, and there was a lot of frustration about how they were getting rid of so many different models and army lists and miniatures and stuff. And to put this in context of why I thought about it the way that I did is, we get lots of questions. How come you're doing Napoleonics in metal? Well, we're not a $7 million company or whatever Battlefront is.
Right.
And the second one costs you 0.4 cents in plastic, but the first one cost you $6,000 or $12,000. And that's for every different variation. And so you go, did anybody notice the fact that when they transitioned to plastics was when they started trimming their offerings? because it's a big hit, and there's a large upfront cost to it. And it's simply it's not. Some people look at that and they go, "Oh, it's a greed thing." And I go, "Well, it's also just an affordability thing. Don't get me wrong; they're doing it so that they can make money. But if they can't afford to do it, it doesn't matter whether they want to make money."
Right.
So they, and they also provide some focus, because you go back a couple of years before that, and there are a whole bunch of people who were mad that well, how come they just keep putting out more tanks that never existed and only existed in a lab and blah, 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 blah. And then you fast forward a couple of years to when they're transitioning to plastics, and how come they got rid of all of these, never saw the light of day tanks? And you're like, pick a side, people.
That's not what we do on the internet, David.
Sorry. No, wargamers, we want to complain about everything. It's never good enough.
Why isn't it all free and ubiquitous, and it comes in all the varieties that I ever looked for?
Yeah. Why can't I have literally everything I wanted exactly the way I wanted it? It's because you're greedy.
So here,
I think there's an age thing going on there, though. I hate to say it. I think there's a certain demographic that feels everything should just be instantly available as they decide it. And
I think that's probably partly true. But
I blame Starbucks, to be honest, but that's a topic for another time.
But yeah, this isn't a new phenomenon with this new generation of gamer either, though. It's been like this for a while, so it's not all that.
Well, and it's sort of there's some expectations like that from the older generation as well.
Absolutely,
it's about different things, but it's the same type of expectation.
It is. You get a lot. Yeah.
So I got a question for the two of you. What do you think of PDF rules? Or just, I shouldn't say it that way because I mean it generically. Digital rules. Whether it's ebook or PDF or whatever.
Okay, I've actually got a little bit to say on this subject.
I thought you might, and so do I, but I want you to go first.
I think PDF rules are okay. And usually what I'll do, a lot of companies will offer, a PDF for, $5, $10 or whatever. And then they'll have the hardcover for whatever the hardcover is going to be going for, $25, $35, $45, whatever. For those sets of rules, if it's something I think I'm going to be interested in, I'll buy the PDF, read it, and if it doesn't suck, then I'll also buy the hardcover edition if one exists. So they're actually making a lot of money off of me that way. So as far as that goes, I think PDFs are okay. For just pure PDF rule sets, I don't really like that, because running a game or having the rules available to you on your iPad at the gaming table, I mean, that sounds like it's really convenient. It's not. It's horribly inconvenient trying to slide through the rule book on the iPad or whatever to find a particular section. And then, of course, you can print and have the PDF bound yourself, but that's an extra step I don't want to go through.
And it costs as much as the hardcover book you bought.
Exactly. And I had to do this in particular. A game we've recently gotten into is Battle Group, which is a game that I love.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the core books of that is Kursk. It's one of the books that they started with, and it hasn't been available for years except as a PDF. So I bought the PDF and had it printed at Staples, and it cost me more than the original book would have had it been available. But
well, that might be changing,
Yeah, no, they're going to re-release all those pretty soon, and that's great. But
thanks to PSC.
My point is that I like PDFs; they're okay, but I'm not a fan of them. And the sets that I really hate, and this is an old man pet peeve of mine.
Get off your lawn.
Hold on, let me tell you how I really feel.
It's card-driven games, right?
Again. I love it.
Every game that comes out has a deck of cards, and whether it's an activation deck or like a superpower deck or whatever. And I don't like it.
Enjoy this.
I don't like it, but that's the way it is. So okay, you got your card deck. But if you release a set of PDF rules that also has a card deck, now not only do I have to print and bind the rules, I don't have to, but I'm going to. I have to print and assemble the card deck myself as well. And isn't that great because you saved a lot of money? No, it's not, because I'm not a 4-year-old in crafts class. Sell me the freaking cards. I'll pay for them. The only company that I know of off the top of my head that does a good job with that is actually Sam Mustafa, because you can buy his cards from oh shoot, what's the name of that company?
Drive through cards.
Yeah, you know, if you don't want to print and like do whatever it is you're going to do with them yourself, you can spend a little money and buy them from print on demand. Anyway, PDF rules.
I've heard this read like a gazillion times in my life, and it never stops being funny.
I know.
I just
and I totally.
You're not wrong. It's just it's humorous.
It is an old. See, I'm one of the old war gamers standing there with these kids with their newfangled card-driven games, and I'm like, get out of my convention with that stuff. Oh my word.
See, now going back to earlier, you need to bring them to the Adrian. You need to be inclusive, and you show them why you have a better way. Tell them how their way sucks, and they need to leave you. Tempt them to something that you want to preserve.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
If only you had a platform you could use to reach many people across the globe.
Yeah, have you heard of the inner power connector tubes? Because I heard that they're a good place to find stuff that didn't exist before.
Oh my God, you guys. Yeah, I'm doing everything I can. I complain about card-driven games every chance I get.
You do. I feel like you probably you're taking a shower in the morning, and I feel like you shout at the wall, those card-driven games, how dare they? In the hope that someone hears, like it echoes off, and you feel good about yourself, like, yeah, I did that.
I can picture the nightmares though, because you can have. It's like you're stuck in an episode of Black Mirror or something, except it's all about gaming. And you need to go to work, but you don't have the shower card.
Exactly.
And so you can't play it. So now you're trying to decide, do I wait and risk being late, hoping they'll get it on a redraw, or do I just go there without, in my pajamas? Without having taken a shower, looking however I do.
Yeah. God. If I wait though, I'm going to be stuck in traffic, and I might not have the superpower card I need that makes traffic just disappear.
I'm going to call you out though on the fact that card-driven games are not new.
You're right.
This is not a phenomenon that started a month ago. This is, from Sword and Flame to PK. There's a long. I don't know. I don't know that I care all that much about card-driven games one way or the other. But there are a lot of them dating back a long time. Now that doesn't necessarily hurt your point though, because everybody has watched their opponent play a game of PK.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, speaking of Sword,
Jonathan's never played PK because he didn't get that joke.
You are right though. It goes back. And speaking of Sword and Flame, I used to play a lot of that way back in the day, and I mean that's a solid set of old school rules. But and actually, a new game that we actually tried it at Huzzah, John, and we want to play it here ourselves. Sharp Practice is, card driven, but it's an excellent game. So, and I
love how you had that caveat. It's okay though because it's an excellent game. Let's just ignore the card driven. And the fact at the con they didn't use cards. Remember?
Oh, okay, yeah, because pulling chits out of a hat is completely different from.
No. I mean, it's the same, but I think one of the reasons why that's done was partly for the feel so that we could use the hat, but also I think there are people who would be like, oh, it's different, and so I think it breaks a barrier down for them, so they don't go on an old man rage and then just Francis the table, Yeah, I think that.
I know it's a lost fight, and I mean, really, it's not a fight because there are obviously excellent examples of games out there that use either card activation or chit activation, or the ones I really have a problem with are the ones where cards do give units certain superpowers, not necessarily superpowers, but
you mean like you get to fire a volley and it automatically hits everything?
Yeah, for example, this is a game that we played at a convention. One of the cards in that activation deck, if unit has it, they get to take a shot at you. You don't have to roll to hit. It's just every shot hits. How is that? That kind of thing. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, I guess.
I don't even remember the name of the rules, but I think they were only $2, right?
Yeah, $2 off of
PDF rules, right?
Yeah.
War Game Vault.
Yeah, which now that you've said that, thank you. We can get off of the rant and come back to what do you think of PDF rules? I think PDF rules are great. They've got their problems, but they do. One of the argument that they keep your costs down or whatnot doesn't hold water. Yeah, they don't seem to hold water, because I think most people that get the PDF rules are going to print them in some way. Now, a lot of people might just print them at home and then stick them into page protectors and a 3-ring binder or something like that. And that, that's cool. But no, PDF rules are a positive thing. I generally like them, although they usually, like I say, they usually end up costing me more money because I'll buy the PDF, and if there's a hardbound version available, I'll buy that too. So
they're kind of an interesting problem. We've gotten less in the last while, but it's not uncommon for us to get inquiries about how come you guys don't do digital distribution, or how come you don't have downloadable copies of your books. And I live in some faraway place and shipping is expensive, and that's a real problem, both for us and for them, right? Because we'd like to sell them the item, but the shipping is prohibitive or what have you. And at the same time, like you say, it doesn't necessarily hold your costs down as a consumer of it. There's also a myth that it's cheap for the producer of it, and it's not exactly false, because obviously you print a whole bunch of books, you pay money for every book that you're producing, right? There's a production cost for each one. But there's also an R&D cost to develop the book, which is the majority of what you are trying to recoup through your sales.
Yeah.
Producing the actual book and having it printed on paper doesn't cost anything like the years of development or what have you to produce the thing to that stage. And the work that you do on layout and what have you, and this depends on some choices. We create a print ready PDF to go to press, and somebody can say, well, you could just make that available online, and you could have it watermarked or whatever if you're concerned about piracy or whatever, and that's cheap and easy. Well, sure, the files that we create to be published aren't ones that you're going to download and stick on your iPad.
Right, of course not.
They vary from several hundred meg to over a gig.
Yeah.
And that's not practical. And it's also cumbersome on your end. And so while those can be flattened and they can be reduced resolution and blah, 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 you're right. What's the benefit of digital if that's all I do to produce it?
Yeah.
And on the one hand, you can say, well, if it materially lowers the cost, and I probably sound like, ornery business guy on this, but I'd say that too many producers of rules sell PDFs of their rules for far less than they should, compared to the cost of their printed copy.
Yeah.
Because really, if they're pricing their printed copy appropriately, I think I mean that in a pretty objective sense, then it should be priced based on the value of the ideas and the design and the game. That should be the high order bit, as it were, because obviously the physical production cost plays into it. But the high order bit should be what the gameplay value of it is. And the PDF of it, you should effectively be deducting your production cost of your paper copy.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you overpriced or what have you, your printed copy. You're charging people too much for it. If you can knock it down to $5 from $50 when you make it a PDF, then you're undervaluing your ideas, or you're screwing people on your hardback.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to balance. But with digital, we struggle with, if we were to do a digital release, would we just do like a flat PDF that was lower resolution and what have you? Or would we actually do something where it being digital is beneficial to the people using it?
Yeah.
From indexing and hyperlinking and stuff to, we have a series of tutorials on our website for how to play ESR.
Right.
We can't put those in a paper rulebook.
Right.
But we could embed those in a digital release, and we could embed them in a digital release so that they are both a series of frames that you can walk through, and so that they play through and what have you. But now you just increased all of the resources that you need in order to create that product and that layout.
Right.
So it's a balancing act.
It is, yeah. It's a funny thing that you say that about the prices of the PDFs. I find that most PDF rules, the ones that I've purchased anyway, tend to run anywhere from the low end of $5, which I think is what I paid for Battle Group Kursk, to a high of maybe $15 to $20. But then there's a large group of people, $20 for a PDF, that's ridiculous. And if you just look at it as the bits that you're downloading off of the web, it is ridiculous. But you got to look at the work that went into producing it. It's the same kind of thing that you see a lot with ebooks, right? I mean, everybody expects ebooks to be dirt cheap.
Yep.
Because it's just a download. It doesn't cost them anything to produce it. Yeah, it did. It cost them 6 months or a year of the guy's life to write the novel you just downloaded. That's what it's worth, not what the actual not what you hold in your hand.
Right. I mean, the paperback was only $7 or whatever at the bookstore anyway.
Yeah.
The cost driver wasn't the production of the book, because that paperback cost the publisher what, $1 to produce? Because they're doing huge lots and it's black and white and what have you. It's not very expensive production, but the time that it went into developing it is the actual cost.
Right.
And there's our books are soft cover. Presently, everything we've released to date is a soft cover book. And we struggle a little bit with that, because on the one hand, I think that it's a really nice product, and that they're concealed coil binding. So there's a coil binding, but there is a paper spine that wraps around it. So it looks nice on your bookshelf.
Yep.
And you can identify it by looking at the spine. But it lays flat when you open it up, and you can fold the cover back around the back and what have you. And so it's very practical for the gaming table.
Yeah.
But people still, many unconsciously and some consciously, will pick up a book and say, this is a hardcover book, it's worth more.
Yeah.
I'm willing to pay more.
Yeah.
Because this has heft to it, or, this feels sturdy, or, and then, a month later they'll complain that, the thing always closes on when they try to lay out their table from the map inside of it. And that, I mean, I do that. I have that same problem. I'm not any different from the people who feel that way. But it's trade-offs. And I know for certain that we lose sales because our stuff is soft cover versus hardcover. And I also know that if we go to hardcover, we'll lose sales because people will be frustrated that, the spine always closes on me when I lay it on my table. And so really you just have to look at it from the standpoint of, what do you want to produce at this point in time? And what are you satisfied with as a good product? What would you be happy with?
Yeah. Well, David, I mean, to me, as a wargamer who doesn't care about your problems and I just want what I want, The solution is obvious. You need to have a PDF available, the soft cover and a hard cover.
And they should all come in one package, and it should cost no more than $10.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to be controversial here, which is something I do from time to time. Partly because part of my work involves dealing with digital print, for lack of a better term, but also real print, whether it's soft cover, hardcover, mass market, and so forth. I think all digital product needs to be free, 100%, without a doubt. It needs to be bundled for free with the print products. You buy the soft cover, the hardcover, doesn't matter. You get the digital for free. But I think you need to have a tiered system for this digital stuff. So if you're talking about an enhanced thing where you have like tutorials in it, for example, I don't think that should be free. But like, I think you should be able to get the whole set of rules for free as a standard PDF that you can just load up on anything, because that's a universal format and you're golden. But like, you look at, say, what Wargames Illustrated is doing, you can get a digital subscription, which a lot of magazine publishers are doing now, but they charge as much as they do for it because it's an enhanced subscription. So it has videos in it. It has, you mentioned hyperlinks, David. It has like all this kind of stuff. So it's more immersive. And I think an experience like that is something that has added value to it that people are willing to pay for. And I think there's really is a desire and a need for that to cost something. To have a generic kind of PDF with just everything laid out, I don't care that it maybe costs a business or a person, $5,000 to bring their ideas to the table. It doesn't matter. That's just cost of doing business. And I think you need to have these kind of lost leaders, partially because like you do have customers all over the place to try to help out. But I also think like that's how you get them into your system, so that maybe they get the digital for free. But then, like Adrian was saying, they end up buying the print anyway. And so if they can get it, I think you're recouping stuff there as well. I also it's kind of a philosophy kind of thing for me. I think you need to have this free sharing of ideas, and just people need to be able to get X stuff wherever. I would say though, well, I agree with you about the softcover, about being able to have it live, flat, and nice. I think that actually is real value to the, for lack of a better term, the heft of hardcover. Insofar as I think if you're looking at a set of rules and it's something that you're going to keep forever, it makes more sense to pay more and have it as hardcover because it's going to last. It doesn't make a business sense because if it's wearing out faster, it's better, right, for your business, because then the customer has to buy it again and again and again. But like for the customer, for the gamer, you want it to last forever, which the softcover may not do as well.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm going to disagree here. So, first of all, the hardcover, softcover thing, I don't buy that. It's like, depending on how. So, like the coil bound books, like the ESR set and some other rule sets, those aren't, the spine isn't going to break on those. They don't have a spine. If anything, they're more durable than a hardcover in that respect. But yeah, I don't buy the whole notion of something should be given away for free. So like you're saying, if you buy the hardcover of the rules, then the electronic copy should be given away for free.
I'm with it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to interject because that's an important question, because there's a big difference between, I don't care how long it took him to, bring his ideas to the marketplace and what have you, cost of doing business, he should give his product away for free, or she should. And the PDF or whatever digital format and the physical one should always come together as a package.
Yeah.
Those are entirely separate. So I guess my question is, which of those are you actually advocating?
Both.
So if the first one is impractical, of just give away your novel and hope they buy something else.
Yeah.
And it's I would argue from a business standpoint, the problem is once you can afford to do that, you don't have to. There's not anything for me to gain in the marketplace by the time I'm so big that I don't need the money in order to continue to operate.
Yeah.
And so it's not that you're wrong. I actually am very sympathetic to this disposition. The problem that I foresee is the people who want to do it won't be able to afford it. And the people who can't afford it will have no motivation to do it. The second one of the PDF or digital release is effectively just another feature of buying the physical one. I don't think has that problem at all. And so I think that that's pretty easy to make a case for, because you go, well, it's a feature of the game system like anything else. Do you include charts? Okay, well, you could charge separately for the charts. Do you include, this or that or another thing? You could break it out, or you can build it together, and you're just saying build it together.
Yeah, I mean, I think people who are accessing the digital, I think part of it for them is they want the portability. They don't want to have to worry about carrying, 20 rule books around with them or addendums and all that kind of stuff. So they have it. And I'm not one who's going to pull up the iPad at the game table and be like, here we go. Like, I'll look at it in bed and flip through and then refer to it, make notes on it, and then actually go to the physical and then be like, here we go. And then the physical is what I'm bringing. But I think there are people who are like, I'm just going to cart this one iPad around, the Kindle or whatever it is, and it has all the things in it. But they also have, like Adrian, like, you also have the physical book. If you can get your hands on it, if it's in print or whatever, you have the physical book. And so, like, it's just kind of a duality there. And it's a trend in publishing, or in some sectors of publishing, as is the free or reduced price ebook thing.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe a reduced price thing. I was going to say, I can't really think off the top of my head of, like, just talking about general publishing, and maybe it's different for you looking at and maybe buying stuff for the library, but just like trolling around on Amazon, I can't think of any novels, for example, that I buy. Like, if I were to buy the Dead Tree version of a book, then, oh yeah, you also get the Kindle ebook for free. No, you don't. You might get, sometimes they'll do deals where you're like, the Audible or whatever is free or cheaper, but I can't think of any where you just get the ebook for free.
But I think that's an easy business case to make, though. I think it's a lot easier to make that one than to make the one about you don't have to buy anything and there is a distribution of it of some type that is free. Yeah, because the just make one free. If you're doing this as a hobby thing, you write novels and you just want it out in the world, great. Or if you're Radiohead and you've already, you're retired in terms of needing to make money, you're retired years and years and years ago, and now you work because it's still your passion, but you don't need to pay the rent, or to keep your business afloat or what have you. Those end up being the two ends of the spectrum that are able to participate. And everybody in between is going, yeah, but I can't go on to my next project until I have funded this one. And now I have to find a different funding mechanism.
Yeah.
Actually, I suppose, an argument for Kickstarter, but I think Kickstarter is overused.
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I don't know. I'm not, talking about authors and novels and stuff, there actually are a lot of, believe it or not, I mostly read indie authors now. There's some really good ones out there, but a lot of those guys and girls do give, like, if they're writing a series of fantasy, so whatever, the first book will either be free or very cheap. They'll list it for the 99-cent minimum price. And they do that to, suck in new readers. And it's like, you get the first book in the series for free. And if you like it, then you're going to buy the next however many there are. That works for a novelist who's writing a series. It's not going to work for a game company that releases a set of, let's say, Napoleonic rules. And that's, what are they going to do? They're going to give you away that set of rules that they have. So you're going to buy the next set of rules that they may or may not, you know what I'm saying?
Well, there's the whole, like, expansion thing, addendums. Yeah. I mean, there's a variety of ways that people can go about it. But, like, I actually see it happening. It's something, like, I work in a library. It's something that happens, but we also get socked where we pay ridiculous amounts for a digital product, where we'll pay for, pick any ebook, I don't care what the name of it is, and I've seen us pay $500 for one copy of an ebook, which
Yeah,
is
no,
ridiculous.
I believe it, but that's a whole different thing with the licensing and everything from the major publishers for ebooks to like libraries. That whole thing is just
It's
Broken?
absurd.
yeah,
Yes.
completely broken.
Horribly broken.
But at the same time, like, we, not just because of us as an institution, but like this, we get a lot of free ones as well, because there's a whole growing thing there as well. Plus, there's an actual legal precedent that's being pursued by the Digital Public Library of America, where if you have a print version of something, you can make a digital version of it and share it, and it does not violate copyright.
Mm.
There's
a certain time frame that you're allowed to go up to in that, because there's this gray area. But yeah, it's believed to be true, and it's being pursued. It's fascinating to me.
Copyright law is horribly broken.
It's ridiculous,
right? And there, as far as the institution of libraries go, I would almost I don't like dictating things to places, because the world should not run based on my preferences or anyone else's, really, as an individual. But I would be all right on the usage side, or from the like philosophical side. I would totally be okay with libraries have to be able to receive a copy for free or practically no cost, because I look at the marketplace and I go, the small guy's not going to get all that many requests from libraries, and it's not going to kill him.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Libraries are the number one purchaser of all material. Print, you look at multimedia, it's amazing.
Sure. Well, I guess my assumption is based on who you are primarily buying from. So like if you're Penguin Books, I bet libraries are buying tons of stuff from you because you have a huge back catalog. But if you're random indie author that just released his first book in a series that Adrian's getting into, then is every library in the country banging down your door already?
You'd be surprised.
Copy?
Really?
Okay.
You really would be surprised.
Huh. I would imagine.
Good.
Yeah. I would think.
I mean, not all of them. I don't want to overstretch it, but really, it's a growing thing.
Though. Okay, that's a good thing.
If I were an indie author, which who knows, maybe someday. But if I were an indie,
shifty eyes, yeah.
No. If I had written something like that, I would be knocking down libraries' door. Hey, you guys want a copy of this? Because obviously, if that's going to get it into the hands of more people. I mean, that's kind of a question to you, John. Is that how it works? Do they come to you, or do you guys have to go find it?
A little of both.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work out. Every place is different. There's certain criteria, and some are better done than others. Self-publishing is usually not the best way to go if you want to get noticed, but sometimes that's the only thing you can do.
Totally disagree. It's the easiest way to get noticed anymore.
Not for the institutions. Self-publishing usually means it's not good quality.
Yeah, it can. And granted, in trolling around the indie author marketplace, you do find a lot of dreck out there. But the people that are serious about it, it's every bit as good as anything, because they'll wow, we're getting really far afield from games, aren't we?
Well,
but
let me bring it back. Henry Hyde, indie author, independent publisher, to self-publishing. I consider his stuff to be very high quality. And when his contract runs out with Pen and Sword, I think he's going to go completely indie. I think.
Yeah.
Don't quote me, but that's my suspicion for a variety of reasons. And he's someone I'd have no problem with saying, hey, look, it's self-published. That doesn't mean it's bad. But consequently, there could be a person down the street who's like, hey, in my spare time, I wrote this book about whatever, and I self-published it, and it got self-published because of a reason. It wasn't good enough to be published through traditional methods.
No, that's crap. Here's a news flash. Most authors are doing it part-time. There aren't a whole lot of guys who are earning a living from it. But
no, true.
The difference between a well-done indie and a the call it the typical indie is not just the writing, but did the author go out and have a cover professionally designed? Did he pay a proofreader? Did he pay a developmental editor? All
that
this
helps a lot.
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing a publishing house would do for you. The only difference being now the publishing house doesn't get their cut. You pay a one-time fee to the editors and the cover designer.
That's true. But also, like, if you're not putting the effort in for it to be properly edited, it's not worth purchasing.
No, it's not. And the guys who went that way are immediately obvious. But all I'm saying is, it's like this is like the elitist attitude. Well, if it's self-pubbed, it's no good. You don't know what you're talking about, library boy. Look around.
It's not me, but for an institution, you need certain criteria. You can't just arbitrarily say, sure, we will or we won't, because then it's not equitable.
Well,
and because you're doing it in large volume, and so there are problems of you have to build a system that scales.
Yeah.
And that's why I go to Amazon and not the library for this stuff. So there.
I thought it was because you love capitalism.
I do.
I was really hoping for a spit take there with the water, and it wasn't a good enough line.
I do love capitalism, which circles back to the beginning of this conversation, and it's why I'm not necessarily. I shouldn't say that I'm opposed to people giving things away for free if that's their wish. I have a huge problem with readers or gamers or anyone expecting it to be done. That's my issue.
That's I suppose that's fair, putting the emphasis that way. I would prefer. So we have on my own little soapbox, I would say that some of our stuff is very aggressively priced. The terrain mats that we'll be announcing on Monday and making available for pre-order, I think are very aggressively priced. The line of trees that we carry from Knock is priced at about $1 a tree.
That's insane. That's amazing.
I think that's very aggressively priced for what you get. I don't think that any of our stuff is badly priced, but I do wish that some of the rest were more aggressive than it is. I wish we could sell our box sets for less than we do. I wish we could sell our rule sets and our campaign guides for less than we do. But there's always a problem of how do you keep the lights on?
Right.
So, and that's not, some people may feel that that's a cop on my part to say, yeah, but we need money for cash flow, for operations, for development, for blah, 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 because everyone can say that. Well, that's true. Any other, developer can say that. And some developers will say that because that's the reason that they're charging what they are. And some developers will say that because they need a justification for charging what they do. And it's an acceptable justification, even though it's not the driving factor, right? And that just varies by the business or the company or the person or what have you. Are they trying to make as much money as they can off of it, or are they trying to strike a balance of value and being able to continue their venture? Yeah. And that's, it varies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not something I'm unsympathetic to. We've talked about it a little bit before in previous episodes. It might seem odd, but like doing a show like this would think, well, what do you need money for, right? But we need money. And so philosophically,
I'm looking at one of the items, the mic that's hanging by your head.
I know.
I'm pretty sure that's the same one I have sitting in front of me, and they're not cheap.
No.
No, they're not cheap. But you know what? They should be free, shouldn't they, John?
So philosophically, people never have to pay to get the show, because I firmly believe that I believe we have really valuable content and episodes of the show, things that we could sell and make really decent money on. But philosophically, I believe it should be 100% free, that there's no need for anyone to pay to ever get access to the show. But at the same point, we need to keep the lights on. We need to be able to keep going. So we have other revenue streams, and should those go away or become insufficient, I would not start charging for the show, but we would go out. We wouldn't exist anymore. And that's the reality. And it's, different kind of arena, but same core concept.
Very similar
between this and
similar problem.
The other. So like, I completely get it. And I think the primary difference is when you have an entity who is doing it and needs to do it to pay the mortgage and pay their employees and everything. Whereas, like, we need the money to keep the show going. Like, we don't make money off the show. I mean, it'd be nice if we did, but like everything that comes in goes right back out to keep the show going. So like none of us are going to lose our homes from it. Now, if we were going to, I mean, that'd be a different thing. And you'd really would have to take that into consideration, or you'd have to find another line of business. And I'm not saying there's any great solutions to it.
Well, and there is a, it's not really moral or ethical question, but there is a deep philosophical question of, what value do you think that the thing that you're doing is bringing to the world? What do you think that the world would be a better, and I'm not saying this isn't, a challenge to you. I'm trying to articulate, I think, what you're talking about is going on in your head. You got to ask yourself, is the world better off with me making this show, but the access is more limited? Or does that do so much damage to what I'm trying to produce that it's the equivalent of the show's not available anymore? That's the balancing act, right? If people had to pay $5 an episode, you go, the show is no longer accomplishing its goal, which is the same as if the show wasn't here.
Exactly.
Or in a different somebody else might feel differently and go, well, we're at least getting out to somebody and we're charging as little as we can under the circumstances to make it happen. But wherever you fall in that range, that's the question that has to be pondered.
And for me, I think my equivalency is I hate ads. Like, I don't want to watch a commercial when I'm watching TV or whatever. I don't want to listen to ads when I'm listening to an audiobook or a podcast or whatever, but they're needed because if we don't have ads, then the show doesn't keep on going. So like we have ads, and I do what I can to try to make them as palatable as possible.
Well, and that in itself is, I think, positive, that there is an awareness of, okay, we need to do this, but how can we do this so that it is, it's a necessary evil. So do I maximize the evil part of the necessary, or do I try to minimize it as much as I can?
Yeah, I try to make it as valuable as possible to the audience.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to be.
I mean, it's no different than saying you got this set of rules and you got to sell it because you need to keep the lights on, but also you want it to get out. You want it to hopefully make a difference for people. And how can you give as much value to them as possible? And just trying to find a way to do that.
Yeah, it is directly equivalent. There was something else that I was going to say, that I was going to bring up, that I was curious, and hopefully it'll come back because now it's gone out of my head forever.
That I won you over and you're going to start releasing really base level PDFs for free with all your products. I'm not expecting that.
I would be the most tempted to do, it ends up being the sad, frustrating part is that you do have to work the numbers and things, because if you believe in what you're doing, you got to go, okay, will it let me go forward doing it?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I do think that it's a valid business case to pursue, to say, well, can the PDF just be a feature of the fact that I bought the book? And it comes along with, and you just have to figure out whether or not you can swing doing it. I remember now. You let me ramble long enough that. So you guys were talking about quality with publishing, and whether individual, independent or, big corporate publishing house and what have you, what quality is purportedly the case and what's going to be true and what have you. And so games, would you guys consider most of the games that you play to be independently published, or to be, vetted through the publishing industry of gaming?
They're mostly independent.
I think it's a mix.
They're mostly independent. There's exceptions to the rule, and the exceptions are obvious if you're talking about somebody like GW or Warlord or somebody like that. But if you look at I don't know, pick a set of rules, Fire and Fury.
Sure.
You know, they didn't have to go to New York and have somebody freaking bless their set of rules. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't
And
know
that,
there's like a central
and that is
publishing agency for games or anything.
Okay, but the point being, they're independently done, and they're perfectly. There's nothing wrong with them. Fire and Fury, I would argue, is probably the best set of Civil War rules out there, at least for me.
The fact that there isn't really a, I don't know, who are big general book publishers. You know, there's Penguin, and there's
Random House.
And the fact that a collection of those doesn't exist in the same way in the gaming industry as it does for fiction, nonfiction books. Yeah, I won't say that they don't exist, but it exists very differently, because Osprey or Games Workshop decides to publish something. It's not the same as if Random House decides to option your book. It is, because nobody ever bought a book from Random House and said, "Oh, I can't wait until the next Random House book comes out. This one was so good."
Right.
They are a facilitator to the market. They are not a player in the market. And so if you look at, if I look at a Games Workshop or a Osprey, I look at it and say, they have chosen to make certain types of games, and they have a certain business model for it. And there are certain expectations I can have about the next game system from Osprey or the next game system from Games Workshop. And they don't develop everything in-house, right? Osprey especially often will either approach a freelance game designer and say, "Hey, we like what you've done in the past, you know, we'd like something in this vein." Or they'll, be approached by, or I don't know what all their process is, but they'll be effectively taking, something from here, something from there, something from there, and then branding it and pushing it out into the world. Whereas Random House, their little seal inside the thing and published by them. But it's a John Grisham novel, or it's a, whomever. It's a very different ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's true.
The downside of that, I'm sorry if I keep looking like I'm waving at the screen, but there's a moth that has been terrorizing me.
It wants to be your friend.
Apparently it does. So, whoever's watching can see that David is just randomly grabbing at ghosts. I think he's going mad.
Well, of course he's going mad. He's been talking to Jonathan Reinhardt for 2 hours now. That's just a side effect. We all have to get used to it.
But yeah, I think that there's a, I think that there's an immaturity in the game market as an industry, not as like players, but as the fact that the game industry is not, unless you're talking about the high level players like the Games Workshop and the Battlefront, and Asmodee and Fly and those sort of things. And those aren't the majority of what's available on the market. They are a majority of what's played.
Yes.
But they're not a majority of the product available. The rest of it is made by, are you independent if you have your stuff published by on Military Matters? Yeah, I'd say that you are, because there's not, on Military Matters isn't Asmodee. Working with them is effectively, it's I and Adrian decide to a rule set, and I have the ability to get to market as the ability to write it. It's not the same as a Random House or a Games.
Yeah, I think it's just really interesting because most of wargaming is, I think, still a cottage industry.
Big time.
And I think people would be surprised to know how many of what they would consider big games weren't really designed in-house, and really those big games are just being distributed by whatever, and they might have an imprint on them, maybe not, but 9 times out of 10 they might actually be some guy in his house or some woman in their house and just kind of working on it.
There's also, I think that there's a big, that's a big factor when it comes to the fact that we haven't seen a pervasive use of the model where, you know, we're a one-stop shop and we have all of the stuff, is because what do you do? Well, I do manufacturing. That's what I do. It's what I know how to do. It's what I'm able to do. It's what I have the skills and the resources and blah, blah, blah I do. And so I do that. What do you do? I do flags. That's what I'm able to do in my niche. And I do game design. And that developed that way because there wasn't more of a sort of industry core that pulled pieces together, like, you know, evil record companies and book publishers and what have you do.
It'd be interesting to see how that progresses.
Evil record companies. That's great.
Ask Radio.
No, I'm not just.
I think it's redundant. A record company is evil record company, isn't it?
Minimizing the impact of necessary evils.
Oh my word! So, man, we have been all over the place tonight.
Yeah, we covered it all.
A lot of ground.
This is how you stay evergreen, which brings value, which allows you to. I won't go.
No, yeah, definitely.
Then you can market and sell, and then you do a course. And anyway, but you have a variety of wonderful things coming up. It's really exciting. If people want to keep up to date with all the stuff that's happening with you and with the Wargaming Company, what are the best ways for them to keep in touch?
Oh, we have a whole long list. We try to be as available as possible. You can hit us up on Facebook. We have the Wargaming Company Facebook page. There's ESR Napoleonics has a Facebook group. We have a community forum on our website at thewargamingcompany.com. You can subscribe to our mailing list there as well. There's a page dedicated to conventions, so you can see where we're going. In 28 days, hopefully all of your listeners will attend Historicon.
Yeah.
It's moving to a great new venue in downtown Lancaster. It's a massive upgrade. Very excited about that.
Yeah, the venue there is very nice. Downtown Lancaster is very nice if you're not driving around or trying to find a place to park. But I'm from that area. I can say it.
And the convention did work out a deal on parking for convention attendees.
Yes, I heard that, that's great news. Yeah,
I won't quote particulars because I'll get them wrong, but they did work out deals with multiple lots.
Yeah,
in order to address the cost of parking, because it's a downtown area and parking's not cheap.
It is. It's expensive and it's hard to find. I heard that they were going to have, at least for the people who are actually staying at the hotel, they were going to have guaranteed reserved parking. So that's a good thing.
So yes, if people are interested in what we do, and hopefully they have all been converted to Napoleonics based on like the first 20 minutes of our of our show tonight, before we decided to take on the problems of book publishing,
which we're very knowledgeable about. You guys take everything that we said to heart,
because we're pros, right?
Of course we are. We've got a podcast and we have an industry guest. Of course we're pros.
You know what a professional is?
What's that?
It's somebody who's done it one time more than you, and you're paying them.
Oh, that's the part we're missing, John. Nobody's paying.
Oh, right.
But yeah, people can hit up our website, thewargamingcompany.com, and find out all sorts of wonderful things.
It's a really nice website.
Yeah, the website is great. And I'm on the Facebook pages a lot. I don't post a whole lot, but I'm always trolling over there. So usually when I'm posting over there, I'm asking stupid questions like, how the heck do you assemble this wagon and things like that.
That's what it's for. Those aren't stupid questions, because you need to find that information somewhere.
That's true. But here I am, Mr. Experienced Wargamer. I'm like, how the frack does this thing go?
But maybe you're just making it up. so people don't feel bad when they feel the same way.
Oh man, what the thing is? Well, whatever. Yeah,
And don't forget, you're on the Twitter.
We're on the, and that's actually new. We're on the Twitter and we're on the Instagram.
Ooh, the Instagram.
Yes.
Are you snapping away?
How we posted those mostly about the same rate as we push out stuff to our mailing list, which tends to average about 1.5 times a week. So we don't tend to be crazy, boom, boom, boom every day. You've got 3 emails from us. Now that we live in the world of political campaigns that just go year round every year, if you end up on one of those, which I ended up on one of those, and let me tell you, once you're on one, you're on all of them, and you can just watch the emails roll into your inbox. So we don't spam people like crazy like that. But
that's good. I think that would violate the GDPR.
Fun compliance issues for small business.
Yes, I know, right?
Well intended, though.
True.
Well intended. Better privacy laws than we have.
Very true. And we're on all the things everywhere. Star charts. We're on the back of textbooks and side of milk cartons as Wargaming Recon. People can find us wherever fine podcasts are found. We hope people will share this with your friends, people you hate, people you mildly like, the person who sat next to you on the bus. Just get people listening to the show so they can find out about more cool stuff like what you're doing, David, over at the Wargaming Company. I got to say, I've never really been into Napoleonics just because it scares me. But
we're fixing that.
Adrian was so excited about ESR, and it's the first Napoleonic rule set I think that I will ever be playing. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Have you got a date set?
We have goals. Calendar of when we're gonna do stuff, and then we move things around depending on
the calendar is completely meaningless.
I think what I have down the fall of 2019.
I'm thinking we'll have a small game on the table. I'm thinking probably by end of summer. The problem is we decided to start 2 projects at the same time, which was a huge mistake. I've been following them. Yeah,
more than 2.
Well, I mean, as far as painting and assembling, it's 2. It's
because you do an Altar of Freedom and ESR, and then I'm finishing up the Black Powder stuff for Black Powder 2.
Right. And
having multiple projects is kind of a good mental break, though. You got to be able to switch between to not go nuts.
And then there's Breach Storm, so that's 4.
Yeah.
Oh, and Hail Caesar. Make that 5.
Oh, yeah. Jeez. Well,
that's the board games.
Yeah, the board games, at least I don't have to paint. And when I say we, I mean me. I don't have to paint anything for, so that's fine.
Hey, I've been painting Breach Storm.
That's true.
And touching up the Black Powder stuff.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Anyway, there's a lot going on, but I hope to have a small game. It'll probably just be 1 or maybe 2 divisions per side on the table by the end of the summer, maybe sooner. But
that'll be great.
My advice would be make sure that you both have 2 and don't worry about how big they are. Like even if they're like 3 or 4 stands a piece, if you're doing it for the first time just to work through mechanics.
And that's what it'll be, because
have more than 1, because the only difference with how big they are is they'll burn up stupid fast.
Right.
But you don't care because you're trying to iterate through learning mechanics.
Right.
True.
So start with a couple small pieces, but then if you have more than 1, then you get to see how all of the things fit together.
Right. Excellent advice from the horse's mouth. So, we'll
see, this is why we have guests on, because we need to learn how to do things.
That and the fact that you and I on our own really aren't all that interesting. So,
well,
oh boy, I'm sure I really increased it.
Hey, you'd be surprised. When we did that small scale episode, we got a lot of feedback and interaction, and I mean, like, I'm sure you must do with all your stuff. We track metrics for things, and it was like, woo, and we're like, what the heck? And people were just really all over it.
I was surprised. It was very popular, so which is good. It's keeping us motivated. So, but yeah, it was surprising.
the small scale miniatures, lots of people shy away from them because they're tiny and so they're differently intimidating.
Yeah.
But they paint really fast. Both because there's reduced detail on them and because they're physically small, and so you don't actually even have to load your brush that many times in order to cover a lot of area.
Yep.
And they look good in mass because there's that visual thing where the larger something is, the more of them there have to be before I stop discerning between them, and instead of seeing people, I see a crowd.
Right.
And the smaller they are, that's inversed. So I see 10 guys from a couple of feet away, and it actually looks like a crowd.
Yeah.
Whereas if those are 28s, it looks like 10 individual guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they paint fast, and you can get them on the table and have a lot of space within. It looks good, and with 28s, everything kind of moved towards skirmish games. Not because it was the number of figures, but it's the amount of effort that I have to put in before I get to play. And with the smaller figures, you can have more figures, but still with reduced, lead time before you get to play.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big factor for us at this point because, like everybody, we're time crunched. So,
and you keep starting projects.
I keep starting. Yeah, I do keep starting new projects. I did take a break from, like you said, it's worthwhile having more than one going at a time. You can take a break. I actually painted a bunch of 28 millimeter Revolutionary War guys over the weekend, so which I actually felt a little bit guilty about doing, but I enjoyed it for a change, so it was okay.
No, that's good.
That's important. If you're not enjoying the hobby, you're doing the hobby wrong. You have to like the hobby.
Well, and that's exactly what happened. I sat down to paint some 6 millimeter figures for All Over Freedom. I was like, yeah, this is really kind of feeling like work. I'm going to do something different.
That's perfect.
Your hobby and my hobby don't have to align, right? Some people don't like to paint. I don't understand them, and they confuse me. But that's okay because they're not me.
Yeah.
And I'm not living their life. And I like to paint, and they don't have to be me.
Yeah. Yep. I don't
Just a grunt from Adrian.
Just saying that because I'm not an avid painter. I've been trying to do well and actually do better, but I have been. But yeah, it's like, how old am I? 53, so that's 41 years late. I still don't enjoy it, but but it's not
the first 42 years that's hard, right?
Those are the ones. Once you get over that, you're hit 42 years in one day, it's smooth sailing after that.
Oh, good stuff. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Wargaming Recon. Want to remind you, yes, we are on all the things. We have a Patreon campaign, and we just have all sorts of stuff coming out all the time. Be sure to keep up to date with what we're doing, and of course, keep up to date with all the Napoleonic goodness happening over at the Wargaming Company. David, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. It's been a blast.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Yeah, this was great.
I think we just need to have you on all the time so that you can just keep making fun of Adrian, and that'll be golden.
That was a different aspect of the show that we don't see a lot. Yeah,
I think that's going to track well with listeners.
I think so too.
One of you sounds more excited about that tracking well with listeners than the other.
I love statistics. What can I say?
Anything that pumps the numbers up, I'm down for it.
Just seeing it on my little spreadsheet, it makes me happy.
Oh my gosh.
People just like to poke fun at people. So there you go.
Hey, so long as everybody can walk away happy at the end of the game or the podcast.
Oh yeah.
I know I am.
Yep.
Thank you much. It was loads of fun.
It was.
Well, thank you everyone once again for listening to this episode of Wargaming Recon. I want to remind you that no matter how busy you are, no matter what's going on in your life, you know that you need to find some time to play some Napoleonics, some 10 millimeter games, and do it on a teddy bear mat because they're just really soft. So be sure to check out one of those from the Wargaming Company because who knows, maybe you want to drape one around yourself as well and be, I don't know, come up with a superhero name because it could be fun. And if people make fun of you, it doesn't matter because we're in a safe space here. So you know that you have to keep on gaming.